It's your man Delvin. Welcome to Delvin's Room. And today I got a classic, iconic, phenomenal comic script turned cartoon that dominated Saturday mornings in the early 90s. Garfield and Friends. Woo! Easily one of my favorite cartoons of all time. Came out in 1988, lasted into 1994. It was on CBS. And here's a fun fact: it lasted 7 seasons, but even when it was canceled, it wasn't really canceled. It was so popular in those early 90s on Saturday mornings. The only problem and the reason that it got canceled was because it was on the wrong network. It was on CBS. NBC and ABC was so far ahead of what CBS was doing as far as cartoons that unfortunately Garfield had to go off the air, not because of it was lacking due to popularity. It was just CBS just couldn't keep up with the other networks. But nonetheless, this was a classic, iconic, phenomenal cartoon. Probably would have lasted even longer if it wasn't on CBS. Now, Garfield, he was one of the lazy, funny, witty cat. You feel me? He was owned by John. He was buddies with Odie. Odie was like the silly, happy dog, where Garfield was like the mischievous, lazy, funny, witty, quirky cat. You feel me? And it just, what was so beautiful about this cartoon was it ran just like the comic script. They didn't do too much extra. Like sometimes when the cartoonists get a comic script or they get something that's already known, like just something else, like maybe a game, they kind of try to go overboard with it. But I love what they did with Garfield. Garfield was already who he was. He already had the personality. We already loved Garfield for what it was on the comic script. They didn't try to do anything to Garfield that the comic didn't do, and it ran beautifully, man. I mean, the episodes are written very well. The beautiful coloring. I mean, it's just so early 90s, late 80s vibe, and you just love the episodes. Like John is always getting into trouble with Garfield. Garfield is always just on a mission. Odie was funny, and the one thing that I really truly love about this Garfield cartoon is it has aged so well. I mean, when I watched it as a kid, I loved it, but I can still enjoy it now as an adult. I just recently binge watched some episodes, and I still have the love that I had for it as a kid. And I think that's because, as much as it was a show for kids, you can still watch it as an adult because John was an adult. Garfield seemed like a Garfield had the personality of like a 30-year-old or 40-year-old person, so it still goes well with time. You can make the argument that Garfield is the greatest comic strip of all time. Aged perfectly. I still love it. I would put Garfield as one of the greatest cartoon characters of all time. I have that much respect and love for this cartoon show and this comic script. It was an amazing show back then. It still is an amazing show right now. I would give it a 9.5 out of 10.